I expected something certainly a lot smaller.
Bar graphs and numbers, but these are actual people.
I don't know, in like my world, in my bubble or whatever, we don't talk about this. It's not something you think about.
You know, what we see is only on the surface.
I mean, looking at this, sex trafficking doesn't have any discrimination, that's for sure. Ages, genders, can affect anybody.
It hits you right in your heart, your gut, your stomach. It's like, wow. Now it's like I feel like I have this weight of responsibility to see how I can help.
Changes through greater awareness and making people realize that this does happen here and will continue to happen until we decide to make a stop.
Okay. So, any initial thoughts or reactions? I know that I've shown this before, so if you've been to this training, this isn't the first time you've seen that. I've seen it lots of times, but sometimes I'm still shocked by it, I guess, over and over, which I think is good. It's better than, well, that's just what happens. Anyone want to share thoughts or comments or anything before we move on about that? Yeah.
I feel like our culture in the neighborhoods allow things like this to happen.
Mm-hmm.
I'm guilty of it too.
Mm-hmm.
I've lived across the street from somebody for about 6 years and don't know their name,
Mm-hmm.
don't know where they're from.
Sure.
I have the natural neighborly type of attitude, but at the same time I don't know who that person is.
Sure.
And we've lived across the street from each other for 6 years.
Yeah.
And so anything could be going on. So for me, it's I've seen that in multiple neighborhoods. So I just feel like that alone could play into,
Sure.
predators' hands.
Yeah. Yeah. I think you're definitely right. Our culture isn't really moving towards that whole inclusivity, connectedness, unity. And I think for those of us that, we've paid attention for the past few years, it feels, at least for me, it feels further and further from that. And so I think definitely that mindset of it's not your business. You don't need to be involved in that business, or it doesn't matter what they're doing over there. That's on them. They can do what they want. You just keep to yourself, do your thing. I think that definitely plays into the ease, I guess I would say. We're not making it difficult for traffickers to do what they do in that sense. And it's not just traffickers, right? We could put that on any kind of activity that would happen. If people are saying, I'm going to choose to not see anything or choose to just keep to myself, then that's also opening the door for perhaps things that shouldn't be happening to happen with greater ease. I also want to point out a couple other things unique to our area. Some of you already know that Bethany Christian Services is one of 5 agencies in the United States that resettles refugees from around the world. So while that continues to be the case, I think that adds to, essentially, we're bringing in cultures of people that are trying to resettle, that are trying to get a grasp for what it means to live in this country, and rely heavily on others to tell them what they should and shouldn't be doing. And certainly Bethany helps with that, but there comes a point to where you kind of have to make it on your own. And so there's populations of people, of cultures, of groups in West Michigan that really don't know what the laws are, that really don't know if someone comes up to you and says, oh, you didn't know, you're not allowed to do this here, or you didn't know, I have the right to do this. They don't really know. And so there's that fear of, gosh, I don't know, and English isn't my first language, and I don't really understand the culture, the traditions, the laws, the whatever. So they're a more vulnerable population for something like this. We know that, D.E. Blodgett St. John's is one of 5 social service agencies that take in and or work with foster care Obviously, we also work with residential youth. There's other organizations in West Michigan that also have residential services. What you have then is a target for populations of very vulnerable kids, where if you're a trafficker, you already know that there's been enough trauma that's happened to this kid where they can't even stay in their home. So if you're looking for an easy target or an easy location of a target, you know, well, these kids are already messed up, so I'm not gonna have to do as much work to convince them that I can offer them something better than what they have. Because chances are, most of the kids that we've worked with in those situations aren't exactly happy to be in the situations that they're in. So someone else coming up to them, offering them something different, is gonna be appealing right away because of that. And then just knowing that we're more of a conservative community. Now, I'm not saying that it's a negative thing, but in this situation, especially when we've taken into consideration the LGBTQ population and the fact that, you know, at HQ or other organizations, the Pride Center, you can talk to them and they can tell you about all the kids that have been kicked out of their home for saying, this is how I identify. And parents saying, well, you're not gonna identify as that in this house. And parents then, they're not gonna report their kid as a runaway because they don't really want them back and they don't want any services. So then we have a population of runaway, throwaway kids roaming around that are gonna need a place to stay, that are gonna need some connections. That also includes a population of vulnerability that may or may not be different from other communities. So when we look at all this, and then we look at what makes up a good victim. That's always what you want to look at, right? A victim of trafficking, what does this person look like? As a minor, the average age of entry is between 12 and 14 years of age. They typically almost always have a history of sexual abuse, 70 to 90% of the time. They have basic needs that are not met. They have a lack of positive support, low self-esteem. They probably come from a home where poverty is an issue. They may or may not identify in LGBTQ plus or another minority group that is targeted or that doesn't have equality. They're runaway or throwaway youth. We know that 1 out of 3 of those youth will be approached by a trafficker within 48 hours. And they'd really like someone to just love them. It's really what they would like. So I'm guessing if I show you this, no one knows any kids that would fit this, right? Like you can't think of any kids you work with, any kids that have come into care that you think even some of these things, you're like, well, yeah, I know a kid that needs that. Because for me, when I was thinking about this list, and then I thought, I feel like I've seen something recently that kind of summed up all of this, and it looks like that to me. Exactly like that. You could take all of those things on this list, the majority of them anyway, and you could say, yeah, that leads to this. That leads to kids that are hurt, that are abused, that are abandoned, that have neglect, that are feared, that have trauma, that are lonely, all of that, which essentially sums up exactly what we do here at UBSJ, exactly what we're about. So really, when I looked at this and I thought, well, if people are the supply, and the people that are the supply are the people that we work with, and they're the easiest targets, then we sure as hell better know what we're doing. We better know about this. We better know whether we're a part of the problem or a part of the solution. Really, like, it's our responsibility, because who else is telling these kids, hey, there's people out there aside from the mess that you came from that actually want to continue to exploit what's already happened to you. So then that leads me to think, okay, if you combine that with culture, fueling the demand, right, that sex sells, that sex is in everything, advertisements, really anything. And this was just, like, I just put in like a Google search yesterday, which some of my staff did see. They did walk in and see some of this stuff, and I was like, what? This is what I do when I'm not meeting with you. Like, this is, you didn't know that. Like, this is a thing. Just popped up on my nice big monitor.
And no one came to me.
No one came to me. No one came to you. Yeah, they were like, well, we don't know. We don't even know how to bring that up. Yeah. Yeah. So if I just put in like a Google search for sex and advertising, and this is what came up. And I'll tell you that these were some of the cleaner images. That there were some that I thought, there's a line there, and I may or may not be crossing it with this. So I'm going to err on the side of caution a little bit. This was the side of caution. And so if you think about this kind of stuff, and I know that we see it, our youth sees it, but I think you have to, again, understand the difference between, as adults, when we see this kind of thing, what our reaction is, and then what a reaction might be for a youth who is still developing, is still trying to figure things out, who already has a history of who knows what that they've been exposed to. And so then plus, this just reinforces some of the things that have happened to them or that they've seen, especially in terms of sex. You know, clearly, when I saw the Burger King ad, I thought, I figured they were trying to sell a sandwich. I mean, that, I wouldn't have thought of anything else other than that sandwich. And I don't know, you can't read the bottom of it, but what the bottom of it says is that it's 8 inches of fun. So there's that as well. Subway, I think that's real funny. They didn't even try to put an image up. They just put sex. Now that we have your attention, eat at Subway. Like, that's it. They didn't even try. They were like, we don't need to put an image up. We're just going to put this word up there. And it's literally like, that's what they went for. They didn't even try. And then the guy selling dressing, I mean, sure. That's the Italian. That's the Italian dressing. Yeah, I mean, when I look at that, I thought, yeah, he just really wants us to buy that dressing. Right? So, I mean, if you put all this together, the deck is kind of stacked against the kiddos that we work with. And we already know that for a lot of us, but sometimes I think we forget about the added issues that come to play, about the bombardment that culture pulls in, or their desire to want to fit in with a culture that essentially is wanting to re-exploit some of the trauma that they've already experienced. So when we talk about prostitution, being prostituted, being someone's hoe, whatever the language is, a lot of times this is what you think it is. And there was a period of time where I would go into high schools here in Grand Rapids, and I would do a presentation on trafficking to youth and kind of say, like, you know, what do you guys think about this? What do you think about when someone talks about a pimp or a hoe or like this culture? And it was extremely positive. Well, you make a lot of money, like everyone likes you, you get to pick whatever boyfriend you want, you get nice clothes, you get extremely positive. And so it was a little, I guess, my initial takeaway after the first few presentations was kind of like, wow, like it's so easy to traffic kids then in our communities, in our culture. It's so easy because they're already buying into, well, this is a good thing, right? This is a good thing. Like, I want to be like this, like the status symbols. Like, this is what I want. Why is this a bad thing? It's everywhere. That's what makes people popular. That's what gets you money. That's what gets you relationships that you want, the things that you want. Of course they wanted to be that. So I would show them this, and I would say, this is what you guys think it is, right? This is what you think this culture is like, and this is what you think you're going to get to. But in reality, like, this is what it is, right? This is what it does. And so you see the first mugshot all the way to the left, and then you see the last one over here to the right. And when I show these mugshots, what I like to ask, and what I would ask the kids, and I would ask you guys as well, is how old do you think she is in the first picture, and how old do you think she is in the last picture? And then we'll get into a little bit about what her story is. Yeah?
I think that's within a year.
You think it's within a year?
Mhm.
Okay. So how old would you say she is in the first picture then?
15.
Okay, 15. Anyone else want to guess? Not feeling brave today?
14.
14? Okay. Yeah, so I think most of us would think, all right. So she's 13 in the first picture. So keep in mind 12 to 14 is the average age of entry. And we'll talk about why that's an ideal age in a minute. And so then these are the mugshots that she's had from being arrested for prostitution. So by the time she's in this last picture here, the gentleman in the front row thought that maybe within a year. Does anyone else have a guess on how old you think she is in this last picture? 15, 16, 17. So still a teenager. Like no one thinks 26, right? I mean, I don't know. Maybe you do. So, yeah. So this picture here and the last picture there, she's 16. So you can tell, and I think part of it is like if you just saw this last picture, if you just saw this person walking around, I don't think anyone would think, well, there goes a 16-year-old. I think most of us would think she looks older than that, right? And if you are in law enforcement and you come across this person, you can see why she probably continues to get arrested, because she looks significantly older than she is. So they're arresting her each time for prostitution, thinking, oh, like, you're a prostitute. And then if she has any ID or someone can actually say, this is how old she is, they're able to kind of confirm that. You can tell, like, in her facial expressions, you can tell when drugs or substances may or may not have been introduced to her. You can tell when there were some physical altercations that happened. You can tell a lot. And so if we look at, like, from this, and then we go to this and say, but this is the reality. Like, there's nothing glamorous about this. This person wouldn't say that she has everything that she wants, that she feels loved, that she has power, money, guys, whatever the dream is, she doesn't have it. And so then when we think about the subculture, right, of the pimp and the hoe and all of that and how that's played out, the reality is that the pimp is just the person in control. There's nothing glamorous about him either. They're motivated by the money, by how much money they can get. So this person, a little background story for you all. So she's an athlete. She's a softball player, really good. And so was on a couple traveling leagues. And during one of those traveling games, a gentleman approaches her mom and says, hey, your daughter is really good. Like, I think that she could be an Olympic athlete. I think she could really go all the way. If she had some additional training, which, that's what I do, I'd be willing to work with her. I'd really like to have the opportunity to see if I could coach your daughter and just do like some training with her and things like that. He hands her a card, looks legit. The kid is of course ecstatic and thinking, sure, this is what I want this. Mom decides to get that set up. He tells her that he really doesn't have a lot of rules, that he only does one-on-one coaching, that she can drop her off in one location, and then he will call her and tell her where to pick her up. Now, I'm not a parent, but if I had heard that conversation, I'd be like, I'm sorry, so what? What's happening now? Like, also, I will be there to watch this. Like, I'd like to actually see what's happening and what I'm paying for and whatever. So, kid is ecstatic. Mom feels a little weird about it, but thinks, okay, like we'll try it for a couple times and see what happens. So, a couple months go by. Kiddo was coached on a weekly basis. Talks super highly of her coach. Her coach takes her out for ice cream after, sometimes out to dinner. One time, dropped her off at the nail salon, because that's not weird. And so she really likes him, like just talks him up to mom and dad, like he is great, like I'm so happy that I found him, like I feel like I'm getting better, and like I can't wait to be an Olympic athlete. Like she has bought into the dream. Hearing that, her parents have bought into that too. Like they're just like, this is great. He turned out to be a really great guy. We can tell he really cares about our daughter. He's got her best interest in mind. All of these things are good. So coach starts saying, you know what, you don't even need to drop her off anymore. I'll just come pick her up from the house. And I'll just take her and then I'll just drop her back off. So after 2 months of their relationship,